All right. So tonight we're here to talk about Wild Seeds Agile Learning Community Pilot Year number 2. And we're going to get started just talking a little bit about like what is unschooling. So we really see unschooling as a lifestyle that is supporting young people as whole people living full, meaningful lives right now. We believe young people have the right to direct their own learning, participate in shaping how their community operates, and support them in accessing, engaging in the world around them in ways that they define. We're going to pause here and ask if anybody had questions about unschooling or if anyone wanted to share their own understanding of unschooling. So I'll pause for just a moment in case anyone wants to chime in. All right, moving right along.
So who are we and how did we get involved in the unschooling movement? So Hannah and I are both former teachers in conventional schools. Hannah has a vast experience in teaching middle and high schoolers in different settings. I was teaching elementary school in Philadelphia and then moved into early childhood, where I had the experience of seeing what community grown education spaces could look like for young people and their families. I think Hannah and I too, as parents making decisions for our young people, thought that there was a better way. And with our background and expertise in teaching and learning, we still felt really passionate about like dreaming and visioning what the optimal conditions for learning were, and also having this experience as parents and adults healing ourselves in this world. What would it mean to be in a community of supportive families who had similar goals? And how could that community help shape and support the learning experiences of young people? And so that led us to vision and dream the Dandelion Project, which we co-founded in 2020. Our pilot year of Wild Seeds ALC was entirely outdoors in FDR Park. It was an amazing adventure. We learned so much and we grew the first iteration of our dream. And we learned a lot about what needed to change and what we wanted to continue to nourish. The Dandelion Project also offers homeschool evaluations from an unschooling lens for homeschoolers. We do spring, fall, summer, and winter camps where we get to connect with home and unschoolers in Philadelphia, but also young people in all different kinds of schools. Some of them end up moving to unconventional schooling once they get to know us and our programs. And then Wild Seeds ALC is one of our main programs right now. And that's what we're here to describe in more detail to you.
We also have Dandelion Aftercare, which is a new program. So if you know any families looking for an amazing aftercare program in South Philly, send them our way. um, all right. So we want to talk a little bit like about our big why. Like, why are we doing this? And it's because we really, really see unschooling as a pathway towards collective liberation. Lard and I were both public school teachers, and we could really see it was tangible, the ways in which conventional schools were really the primary means for socializing young people into capitalism and patriarchy and colonialism and all of the different systems of oppression that really seek to isolate us and compare ourselves with each other and operate from a competitive kind of scarcity mindset, really keeping us like sick and separate, really elevating some while intentionally harming others. And we couldn't be about it. We couldn't be about that system anymore.
And because we've been socialized into these systems, we have to be really intentional about all of the ways that we are kind of like in resistance, all the things that we're reimagining so that we're not accidentally, unintentionally replicating parts of our culture that we think are toxic. We really think that we can do better and that we can do better for our young people.
So unschooling like really flips the script on conventional schooling, because instead of prioritizing production and output and working overtime, we see things like so much homework and like test scores driving everything, and an emphasis on someone else telling young people like how good or not good their work is. Unschooling really prioritizes relationships, being in relationship, learning how to be in relationship, and also being in the process of learning, which is messy and sometimes unpredictable and spontaneous and fun, and doesn't look one certain way, it looks all different kinds of ways.
And I think that that we get at these questions with unschooling and community, like who shows up for you when you need help? Who supports you in pursuing your passions? Like with whom do you share what you have in abundance? These are all things that we think we need some skill building around, and that's something that we see as like our primary work in our unschooling community.
And it's really cool because while we are like developing these different relational skills, we're also creating the optimal conditions for unschooling. Because unschooling really thrives in communities where people are feeling safe and nurtured and cared for in ways that allow them to continuously share their passions and their skills and their expertise, and also their materials like are like what we have in abundance, in ways that can really uplift and enrich, um, everyone in our community.
And we think that unschooling communities really create the conditions for collective liberation, that it becomes like a thing that we're living now, that we're practicing daily with the people that are right in front of us and right around us.
Yeah, so our part of our work is also seeing how struggles intersect and impact people, and how systems uphold oppression. But our practice in disrupting and interrupting and transforming power is really about people and connection and being in right relationship with one another, centering joy and living in ways that are most supportive to ourselves and to our entire community.
So, at our heart, the Dandelion Project is a youth advocacy organization that's unschooling and community. We believe young people are disempowered in ways that hurt them and that don't actually support them. And so, our goal is to empower young people to make more decisions for themselves, to grow in touch with their feelings, their needs, and their interests, and to grow in building relationship and community building skills. And to do all of that while being held by like a nurturing, connected community of adults who are also practicing the same things with each other and with their young people, like all in support of each other. We would say too that we think that young people are experiencing all of the systems of oppression in our society, all at the intersection of their own identities, and that that's something that's kind of like unique to childhood and young people. And that's why we say that we're a youth advocacy group, because we think that young people in our society need intentional advocates. So, what's our role as grown-ups facilitating an unschool, and how do our programs empower young people? We'd say that at the one of the roots of from which all grows at the Dandelion Project is our trust in kids. And that means fundamentally we trust kids to know themselves and to be able to describe themselves to us. And that a large part of what we do with young people is to affirm them. That means to affirm all the parts of their identity, their genders, their all of their beautiful neurodivergence, their individual needs, and also to affirm their interests and passions and help to support, lift up, and connect them to resources and opportunities and experiences beneath the interests and passions that they define themselves.
Another one of our roles is to really help create a space where it's safe to make mistakes, because authentic learning is messy. And our approach to conflict and coming together as community really centers care and empathy and compassionate accountability. really working on identifying emotions and feelings and sharing our needs with our community so our community can respond. We really reject punishment and shame and isolation and fear. That's not something that shows up at our community. We really believe that we can grow together. We really believe that we can make mistakes and be messy and not disown each other in the process. And another important part of our role as grown-ups is like modeling this for young people. So we're actively, practicing the same conflict processes that we work with young people in our facilitator team. We model disagreement with other grown-ups in front of young people. We're really trying to show young people a different way from what they often see in mainstream media.
And so we're actively working with young people to develop community building skills. And so that those skills we think are like communication skills, conflict resolution skills, working together in collaboration versus competition, building our capacity for empathy, and again, practicing with young people, affirming the identities of people around us and in our community.
Yeah. And another role is sharing decision-making power with young people. So we, really come together to co-create our community agreements. We come together to, decide how we're spending different budget money for different activities in our community. And a lot of this happens through sort of like ad hoc, impromptu, conversations. But we also have a former structure called our check-in change-up process, which is primarily used to co-create community agreements. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next section.
Another role that facilitators have is to hold space and model, practice, and play in setting daily intentions for our day, both what we want to do and what kind of people we want to be, having experiences, and then coming back at the end of the day to reflect on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too when we get into our program. But the intention behind this is that we're practicing living an intentional life with young people.
Yeah. And we already talked a little bit about how, grown-ups in our space are resisting authoritarian ways of being, that we're not focused on like punishing or shaming folks for mistakes. Instead we are trying to find a pathway to yes. We're trying to support young people through their mistake making and like learning through that process and being accountable and repairing. Um, and, our role as the co-founders of the organization is to make sure that we're partnering with other grown-ups and other organizations who have a genuine love for young people and a genuine care and a genuine respect. So we make sure that we are all resisting authoritarian ways of being.
Another role for us as the adults in the program is being in solidarity with kids. That means understanding their struggle, their kind of lack of power in some ways and agency as children, and showing up for them. We work to not only level power, but also to create the capacity within them to stand up for other people in our society that have less power than they do.
And finally, uh, a role for grown-ups in our community is like really knowing our own identities, really understanding our own privileges, how we show up in the world, how we're received in the world, because when we have that own like self-awareness and self-knowledge, we're able to help young people grow in these understandings as it relates to their own identities and ways of being in the world. Um,
So we just shared a lot about like our values and philosophy, and you're probably wondering now, what does this look like in practice, more specifically, which we are about to get to, but we wanted to hold space if there were any questions that anyone wanted to ask now. You could write them in the chat or come off your mute and speak the question into the space, but we'll hold just a minute in case there's questions that are coming up now. Cool. I see some questions that we saved for the end. That's great.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. All right, so now we are going to talk a little bit more about the logistics, or like how we're doing this work that we were just talking about. So first I'll share that we are an Agile learning community. ALCs are an international model. It's really exciting. We'll plop the, oh, actually, we have the link here on the screen, but www.agilelearningcenters.org is a great place to go. One of my favorite sections, I mean, the website, it has so many amazing details about this model, but one of my favorite sections is the map feature, because you can see that there are ALCs, like I think on almost every continent now, and that's really exciting, that this way of partnering with young people is, catching as an international movement. So being an ALC means that we use Agile tools. They support this unschool life in community. At the core of the Agile learning model is this belief that learning happens in cycles. So, we're actively in the practice of setting intentions, thinking about how we want to spend our time, what matters most to us, what kind of people we want to show up as in the world. And then we move into like creation or having experiences that help us meet those intentions. We're in the daily practice of reflecting on our experiences and creations. Did we do what we intended to do? Did we change course, and did that feel good? Did that feel like the right decision? Or, did we kind of get sucked into something that maybe didn't feel so meaningful, and we'll need to make some changes the next time? And then sharing is the final process. So, young people love like a show and tell, and love to share out their learning. Oftentimes, young people are sharing their learning in the way of creating offerings, which we'll talk a little bit about, but it's basically a way to share like a learning experience with other young people. And it's really beautiful. So in our program, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the great things about being like an international model, using an international model, is that we get to connect with other facilitators who are doing the same work. A lot of times for us, this work can feel a little lonely, like we're like creating the path as we're walking it. And so we have to like learn every lesson ourselves. But with access to like international Slack spaces, we get to talk to other Agile learning facilitators and collect some wisdom, and that feels really valuable.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks so much for adding that, Lar. Okay, so our current Wild Seeds program, pilot year number 2, is running Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. We do have Dandelion aftercare also on those days that goes until 6. And then our rhythm for each day is that young people are dropped off to us, most around 9, but sometime between 9 and 9:30. And then we have a morning meeting, which is a time where we connect, we do our set the week, we do any check-in change up, which you're going to hear all about in a couple of slides. We have any announcements, we do our affirmation, we remind young people of agreements, we play games, we do all sorts of things in that big morning meeting. And then after morning meeting, we move into small groups. After small group meetings, The vast majority of the day from 10:15ish until 2:15ish is when young people get to self-select into different offerings or their own self-directed pursuits. At 2:15, we come together and the whole community works together to clean up our space. Parents are often like shocked by how much their young people are contributing to, washing dishes and cleaning the kitchen and vacuuming the floors. It's really amazing. And then we do our afternoon small group. And then finally, young people are picked up by their grown-ups at 3 p.m. Oops.
Mm.
Oops. Sorry. This way.
So now I'll share a little bit about our daily meetings. So the first is the set the day. This is the whole group meeting that we have every day when we come together. I'll say too that our schedule sounds like meetings, 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 but the meetings are really like participatory, interactive, interesting. We're thinking about what makes them like fun, relevant, and useful, and like what engages us all to be there. So I guess I want to say that because meetings sound like a board meeting. But so we use a big whiteboard to set each day. And we attached to our set the week or set the day calendar is a parking lot. And in the parking lot is where young people, facilitators, are adding ideas for offerings. And we use the parking lot to create our set the week calendar. And so each day at our whole group meeting, we read what offerings are on schedule for that day. And then young people could add into them too. They could announce, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing at this time, and we can add into that. And so we review that with young people so that they know. And then throughout the day, we ring a bell for each offering because not everyone can remember the whole schedule just from one reading in the morning. And so we ring and announce each offering as it happens. Then after that, we move into our small groups. Small groups are divided. Right now we have 3 small groups, and they're loosely divided by age, developmental needs, friendships, relationships with facilitators, siblings sometimes are kept together or in separate groups. So I think there's a bunch of considerations that help us like formulate those groups. But that's where we do a lot of these like active skill building around communication skills and conflict resolution. And this is where we get to kind of have even more space for a larger voice. We get some more intimate connection time with each other and with a facilitator too, which I think feels really meaningful. So young people in all of the groups have journals, and that's where we really talk about our intentions for the day, and then move into some games and activities. So I'm running the youngest group right now, which is I think all 5-year-olds. And some of the things that we're doing are playing an emotions game where we use emotions cards and do a reflection based on our feelings for that day to kind of give our vocabulary around like how we describe our feeling, how we understand how we felt throughout the day, and to share that with each other. The oldest group this year did a like a critical analysis of the song Victoria's Secret, analyzing kind of the impact of capitalism on body image, and using pop culture as a way to kind of understand how our culture gives us messaging and what we agree with and don't agree with. And that group used that to kind of make some agreements themselves about how they would be affirming of each other's bodies. My group also did a storytelling and listening, because 5-year-olds, we needed to practice a little bit of like restraint. Like, how do we listen while someone else is sharing? How do we enjoy the benefit of other people's restraint when it's our turn to share with each other? And we've done a lot of discussion of current events because kids are learning about things in the world and have fears and concerns and want to contribute. And so we've like really created a lot of space for that too. Hannah, I wondered, did you want to add
Yeah,
any?
I would love to share. So, I am a facilitator of like roughly the middle group. The young people in my small group are ages 7 to 10. And just to give a couple of examples, we've also used like emotion cards to reflect on like different experiences that we've had or to tell stories about a time where we, felt really angry and then like how does that feel in our body? Where does that feeling live in our body when we feel it? Like what do we need to do to get those feelings out of our body? And how can we do that in ways that release that big hard feeling but not hurt other people? We've also done, storytelling around like really exciting and happy times too. We've had, lots of conversations around consent and if young people can change their minds and if they can change their mind, if changing their mind's going to hurt someone's feelings, and if they can change their mind, if they've made a promise. We've talked about, lying and is it ever acceptable to tell a lie? We've also, one of the most fun things that we've done in our small group, though, is our secret handshake dance. And that is a dance that we developed on the first day of pilot year number 2. We've all added a dance move to it, and it's something that we are in practice of every day when we come together, and it really like sets the tone and the vibe of our small group.
Thanks. But small groups are great.
Yeah.
And they're really important. And I think we're just continuing to evolve like what that space means for young people. And we're staying really attentive to them. Like what is capturing their interest? What feels most meaningful during that time? And like that's how we're going to move then. We're going to follow that direction and still kind of bring in our values and skill building. We'll definitely be able to answer more questions about that if they come up. And then the last meeting that's in our rhythm is a check-in change-up meeting. And we have space for this every day as part of our end of day or as part of our whole group meeting in the morning. And this is how we co-create the agreements for the space. This is how we bring individual needs to the community, and the community can collectively brainstorm and take action towards meeting individual needs. So the check-in change-up meeting starts with someone bringing an awareness. So someone could come to the check-in change-up meeting and speak the awareness into the meeting. Not everyone feels comfortable doing that. Anyone can also pre-write their awareness on our check and change up board, which is always there. They could tell a facilitator, their small group facilitator, or anyone else. They could ask to be anonymous. They could tell their parent could tell us. We also have an anonymous feedback form where parents could be completely anonymous too. We want to gather the needs, and we have so many different ways of doing that address the different comfort levels. And I think that we are supporting young people in like having a voice in this way. So once there's an awareness, and the awareness might be, so it's too loud in here. That was an awareness this year. And noise is disrupting me. So one of the first things we do is we might ask like, hey, is this a shared experience, or other people having this experience too? And people can kind of add to the awareness so that we're getting kind of a full picture of what the experience is in the community. And it's fine if it just belongs to one person. It doesn't have to be a group experience to be important. And then once the awareness is kind of fully described and understood by the group, we move into a brainstorm, like what could we do as a community? Even if this isn't something that's affecting you, like what could we do to address this? So with the noise issue, we came up with a hand signal of like when people are screaming. If we were like within a couple feet of each other, we would use like just a normal speaking voice. We would, change the kind of play we were doing in this space, or move that kind of play away from offerings that were happening that maybe where it would be harder to tolerate a louder volume. Once we have a group of ideas that the group says that they are good enough for now, safe enough to try, we're not going to be hamstrung. Is that a word? We're not going to be bound by perfectionism. We don't have to have the perfect solution. We're going to use the metric of good enough for now, safe enough to try. And then it moves into practice. And then we spend about a week, sometimes we'll determine the length of time, practicing those solutions. And then we come back, hey, we practiced using this hand signal. Did it work? In Wild Seeds, that didn't work. So we added on to that idea that like once you see someone doing this, that everybody else would also start making that. So it was kind of like a wave of that. So everyone would contribute to that. But so we can adjust the things that we're practicing. We can the idea is that change could be iterative, that we could be adding on until we find a solution that meets the needs. And the group says, hey, this need is addressed by this solution. And then we move that into an agreement. And then that gets posted on the wall in our space as an agreement that we are consistently practicing, agreeing to, and facilitators will remind us, and then hold us to that agreement. And I would say that facilitators also are using a check-in change-up process, that we are really using what we're amongst ourselves, what we're using with young people, that we believe this is a transformative tool and it's not just something we deliver to kids, but that can really transform conflict and needs getting met amongst adults too.
Absolutely. And I would also just add that the set the day photo in this slide is from Lauren's home, one that she uses with her family. And we do have like images of set the day from Wild Seeds this year, and maybe we'll share one. We'll figure out a way to share one. I know we popped one in our story on social media recently, but there has been a lot going on at Wild Seeds this year when it comes to offerings. So offerings, instead of any kind of mandatory curriculum that young people are forced into, young people are invited into many different offerings, which are activities, experiences, trips, and offerings can be facilitated by anyone in our community. They're often facilitated by facilitators, but they're also facilitated by young people, by outside organizations, by parents coming in to support and enrich the learning opportunities for young people. So this year, these are all different pictures of offerings that have taken place so far. I wanted to start by sharing that, oh my gosh, we've had so many exciting offerings. There have been things like, a series of meetups around art history, specifically exploring Jean-Michel Basquiat. There have been a variety of different sensory bin explorations. We've done what we called lunch in a bird feeder, where we're like live streaming being in a bird feeder and noticing all different kinds of species of birds. There have been opportunities to co-plan, design, and make a cake together that we all tried, and then share our reactions to that cake. And it was pretty funny hearing from young people what they did and did not like about the collaborative cake. We've done things like Philly's batting average math. We've done making finger puppets and doing puppet shows. There have been an abundance of playground visits, trips around the neighborhood, trips up through the Italian market, trips to buy, interesting foods that maybe we weren't familiar with and give them taste tests. We've gone up to the Italian market for tortillas to make guacamole. We're in the process of developing billionaire math. We did live action Hungry Hungry Hippo. We've been finding cool stuff to look at under microscopes. So anyway, there's just such a wide range of different things happening at Wild Seeds every day. Some things, really pre-planned, and a lot of things happening spontaneously. And one thing that's really emerged this year that didn't so much in pilot year one is the emergence of clubs. And clubs have been a way for young people to take a deeper dive, a more consistent and ongoing deeper dive into topics that are interesting to them. So far, the clubs that have emerged this year are Performing Arts Club. We have a cooking club, We have an emerging debate club. We have a music listening club, and we also have a newspaper or zine club that is taking form. But it's really exciting, and all of these, offerings that facilitators are bringing come, from our own passions, come from observing young people, come from seeing the different things that young people are interested in our parking lot. Um, and then young people are feeling really excited to share with the community as well. Do you want to add anything about offerings?
I would just add that we've started field trips. We just went to the Edgar Allan Poe House, which was so great. We did a tour of Termini Bakery, and we're just starting to kind of like envision traveling a little bit to explore beyond where we can walk in our neighborhood, and to get even deeper into like who's here, what's here, and who wants to host us to teach us about who they are in our neighborhood. So we want to talk a little bit about pain points. These are things I think that have been difficult for parents about our program, about unschooling, our program in pilot year 1, about unschooling in general. I would say we as parents aren't immune to these pain points ourselves, that they continue to come up for us. And I think the pain points could also be described as like growing pains, because I know for me, as I'm kind of like growing and healing myself, I am finding, I think, more ways to resist the beliefs that I've been socialized into, to stay attached to like my values around learning and being with youth. And but anyway, we wanted to give an opportunity to talk through some of the things that parents have felt difficult about our program in the past. As a way just to think through whether this program feels really aligned for families. So some pain points have centered around conversations and offerings around identity, white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, sexism, ableism, etc. All of these topics have come up already, I think, this year and in pilot year 1, because young people are noticing them in our culture and bringing them to us, and we are willing to engage in those conversations. We think we are obliged to, in developmentally appropriate ways. And then we also share with families when we are having these conversations. So families have an opportunity to download with their young people also. So what might some of these conversations and offerings look like with young people? Hannah mentioned billionaire math. We were recently writing wishes for the world. I was leading a group, and we read a book about a young person making a wish, and then we wrote our wishes for the world. And one young person wished that there weren't millionaires, that had people shared what they had instead of keeping more than what they needed. And so one of our facilitators is doing billionaire math as an offering to explore that interest, that topic. We also noticed that maybe some young people are recently candy millionaires. And so we invited them to share what they might have in abundance, and bring candy in tomorrow for us to package and take to the community fridge. So along with that, we'll have conversations around access to food, mutual aid, in equitable distribution of resources, and what our responsibility can be to those things. Like, what could we do? How could we take action? I think in the choices that we make as a program, why we often go to small vendors in the Italian market versus going to Acme, both within probably equal distance of Wild Seeds, and that we are making a choice to support a small business. And that's a kind of a way that we are investigating what people can do within capitalism just to support like neighbors and community members. We've read books like Bodies Are Cool and A Normal Pig, which discusses like all different types of bodies and how we can affirm them and how right we all are. And A Normal Pig, which is about what's normal. One of the 5-year-olds said, like, just being yourself is normal, and how we can avoid yucking people's yums and instead affirm all the things that we know about people. So I think that's a lot of under that category of kind of like systems of oppression and identity that people have struggled with in the past. And I think other things that parents have struggled with have been kids not opting into offerings, especially offerings that the parents wish they would opt into, kids learning in non-linear ways. So having an interest, but then maybe not sticking with it, only to return to it later, we usually find. And parents' fears around literacy and other content knowledge. We support literacy in so many ways we could describe to you. And we support content knowledge, like learning in a lot of ways. But we don't create offerings based on parents' fears about what and when their kids are learning certain things. And that can feel really tricky. So I think after this section, we kind of just invite you to ask yourselves if this is something you want to commit to, that you might encounter these struggles, and like, how would you process these feelings that you're having? Do your values and beliefs about learning align with like letting your kids really direct? That this isn't a buzzword. And so there's going to be some like struggle behind what it looks like in real practice. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. So next we are going to talk a little bit about safety, because oh my goodness, we should have added that to our list of our adult role in
Yeah.
unschooling. Ding, 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 ding. It's safety. It's so much about safety. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to talk a little bit about physical safety, and then Lauren's going to talk about emotional safety. So a big part of creating physical safety in our community is through our community agreements, which are things that we come together and co-create. And sometimes I will also say that, like, facilitators, since we are charged with the safety of young people, we also create safety limits. So there are many times when grown-ups charged with safety are going to say, like, no, we cannot climb up, to the top of the 20-foot tree, because if the young person can't get back down, there's not really a safe way for me to get you down from a 20-foot tree. But a lot of times we are able to come up with physical safety through agreement making and not necessarily just enforcing things. We also have background clearances for all staff. We have all 3 clearances that educators need in Pennsylvania. Also any of our like ongoing, like any substitutes or ongoing volunteers also have clearances. All of our facilitators are also CPR and first aid certified. We've also all participated in mandated reporter training. We have also made modifications to our space for safety. Um, for a while that included like having mats down for tumbling. But then we also realized that um that tumbling in the space just wasn't safe. We tried a whole lot of ways. We came up with agreements with young people. We tried and tried, and we weren't able to make that work in our space. So we've been able to move those kinds of activities outdoors. And sometimes that's a way that we work with safety. It can't happen indoors, so we're trying to find a pathway to yes. Well, we can do some of these different things outdoors. We practice fire drills monthly. We also have care sheets for each child. So care sheets are a sheet that has allergy information, and any kind of information that we need to help take care of young people. Those are accessible in the space by facilitators, also available to facilitators only online. But those are things that we review and know about each young person. We also have emergency numbers posted in the space. And we're really, really lucky that we are most often operating at a 1 to 5 or even 1 to 4, maybe 1 to 4.5 ratio at this point, which is really great. Yeah.
And oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like, did I miss anything? No.
So for social emotional safety, community agreements, again, is at the top of this list because this is social emotional safety is also something that we're really making agreements around and protecting. Communication protocols with families and partnership meetings with parents. We as parents know that when we are informed, we feel the most safe, that we are a source of wisdom about our own children, and that that's a really important connection in a program. Our conflict resolution practices keep young people so emotionally safe. We are doing constant skill building that we've described around community, communication, conflict, and this helps keep us safe. The relationship building opportunity that exists because of our great ratio, where young people know us, we are consistent across the things we say, we are consistent in our respect for them, and we are consistent in the ways they can see how much we enjoy them. And then facilitator meetings. We have daily facilitator meetings where the team connects to support individual and community needs. And we also have a longer weekly facilitator meeting. So we are really sharing information about everything that's happening so we can pan out and look at the community conditions to make sure that the community conditions aren't allowing things to continue to happen that hurt or harm any member of our community. And then we have transparent procedures and practices. And that means that young people and parents can really imagine how we're going to handle different situations because we're communicating about it.
We also want to share how families can imagine being involved, because we don't really see ourselves as just like a drop-off program. We really imagine that we're not only building community with young people, but with entire families. So we want to share that, families may be involved in a conflict process or in our transformative justice process, like a restorative circle. So if there's like ongoing and consistent conflict with a young person and others, families might be pulled in to kind of help support how we create a different pathway forward. We have the intention of really to be practicing mutual aid in our community. We have an upcoming event where families will be able to bring in like kids' winter gear and gently used toys and other things so that we can do like some trading. And we imagine like growing our capacity for mutual aid in the future. We also really imagine our community learning and unlearning, healing, growing, and transforming together. We talked about some of the grown-ups' roles in our unschooling community, and we want those to pan out into our wider community. We want to be like doing identity work and with our whole community. We want to be talking about how whiteness shows up and how we are caring for everybody in our community, how our space is inclusive and accessible. We want to be learning, we want to be deschooling together. We want to be understanding how conventional schools, harmed us individually and how we're, healing and growing from those experiences. Um, Parents can also plan to be involved in developing care plans for young people. We talked a little bit about those and, just developing plans for how we can care for young people when it comes to neurodivergence or allergies or anything else that needs some extra support. We'll also have facilitator partnership meetings throughout the year. So, facilitators of small groups are their small groups, young people's families partnership person in the community. So, your young person's small group facilitator is a primary person to communicate with. We'll meet throughout the year to check in about like how things are going. We'll also have open and transparent communication. We're actively posting every day on Slack about different things that are happening in the community. Parents can, really see offerings that are coming up, conversations that are happening in close to real time or, within a week or two of the experience. Um, and facilitators are actively communicating with parents about individual young people and, what's going on in the space. Parents, may come in and facilitate learning experiences with the community. Maybe you have like a really cool passion or hobby that you'd like to share. We'll ask families to be involved with fundraising. So we are primarily tuition based, which makes our program less accessible. And fundraising really helps us. And, we just ask that all families, all members, all grown-ups in our community will be in support of young people on their path, meeting them where they're at. And we'll help with that as much as we can by providing, resources and language that we're using at Wild Seeds to talk about things and, having the open communication and dialogue with families, so that we really are building community with everyone involved.
So enrollment, our enrollment process is a 7-step process. Um, as you can see. But first, we'd invite you to read about us. Maybe you have already on our website, read our core values, and the Wild Seeds overview. It's a great recap of really who we are, and we've spent some time and taken some care in describing that. So I think it's valuable in determining whether this is a place that feels good to you. Families are strongly encouraged to attend an info session. Here you might be today present or watching it later. And then the third step is to complete the student application. Once you've applied through the application, a co-director will reach out to schedule a family enrollment meeting. And this is a time for us to talk about the program in the context of your specific child or children. Like, what are the questions you have that like are specific to them, and to answer any other questions that have come up for you. An optional step is to schedule a trial day. The fee is $70 for a day or $210 for a trial week, which would be the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And your young person would get a fuller sense of the program before committing to enrollment. And then to confirm enrollment, families are asked to pay the last month's tuition and an activity fee. And then the first month's tuition will be billed during the first month of enrollment. The investments, we have a sliding scale, trust-based tuition scale. Our sliding scale right now slides from $45 to $100 a day, which is roughly $540 to $1,200 a month. If this sliding scale doesn't slide low enough to meet your family's budget, you could reach out to see if additional equity funds are available for lower tuition. The trust-based tuition scale trust-based means we're trusting you we're not asking you to fill out a big financial application where you're sharing all of the finances for your family. We're just really asking you and trusting that you'll make the tuition offer that fits your family and also considers the sustainability of the program. The actual cost of the program is about $66 a day or $792. The fee timeline, just so that you have advance notice, is there's an application fee, $5 to $25, the trial day week, which I described on the last slide. And then upon enrollment is the last month's tuition, the activity fee, and then the first month's tuition.
All right. So that concludes the information that we plan to share with you tonight, and we hope that you'll consider learning and growing with us this year. And I think we could stop the recording.